Welcome to Navigating the Abyss. We are Teri and Catherine, two necessarily trauma-informed moms who, through our own journeys, were inspired to become conscious parenting coaches. We are here to share our ongoing learning and insights in the hope of bringing some new perspectives and clarity for parents who might be on similar paths. We hope you'll join us.
Hello, everybody. Today we are discussing the concept of radical acceptance, which has been really important for us to develop in guiding our own struggling young people. We're going to be talking about the difference between regular and radical acceptance. What even is it? We're going to be sharing some everyday personal parenting challenges as examples too. Just where are we meant to draw the line as parents? And how do we take care of ourselves when it all feels like too much? We really hope you'll take what you need from this episode. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So Teri and I are back again. Today, we wanted to explore a little bit this concept of radical acceptance. It's played a big role in both our lives. So I think we just wanted to jump in and talk a bit about what this means for us and how we engage with it in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a big question that overarches, and let's see what we managed to get to in this conversation that we haven't yet had. How does radical acceptance differ from typical acceptance? Is there anything that comes up for you when I ask that?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I hear acceptance, I hear this voice, oh, you have to just accept it. That's what it is. There's a resignation to that. Yeah, it was just kind of a sense of defeat in a way, right? And of resistance. Whereas when I hear radical acceptance, to me, it means a letting go and a trusting, because I believe there is a greater intelligence or logic or a meaning to the events that are taking place that are beyond my grasp, but that are making sense of all of this. And so I think when I'm in radical acceptance, it's a letting go of trying to control and a belief that something out there that for me represents love, kind of has their hands on the steering wheel.
Oh my God, that was so well said. I don't know if I can meet that, but that's amazing, because I love that idea that it's about resignation, regular acceptance. There's so much truth in that, because actually I think what radical acceptance has given me is a sense of possibility where there was none, and where there was resignation, where you're having to just roll over and accept, oh, the system works this way. Oh, yeah, my child's got issues and troubles, and it's just, oh, this is my lot in life. This is her lot in life. But when it comes to radical acceptance, it's like up-leveling in a way where you almost go to another plane, and it's like, wait a minute, somebody told me I didn't make my baby. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was there. And when they said that to me, and they took it a step further, and I really didn't get it. They said, well, hang on a minute, you were present at conception, if you like, when you did the act, but when the sperm actually met the egg, was it anything to do with you, really? Of all of those different things that might have happened in that moment. And if you think it was something to do with you, just pop out the back and create yourself an eyeball and bring it back to me and let me see what it looks like. Who are you? And that's Michael Singer's kind of little analogy, which I love, from The Untethered Soul. But I got that lesson. And at the point at which I had to come to terms with the fact that my daughter may or may not be with me the next day or the next moment, or the course is it's never going to be okay. It's not like we can sit and say it's okay, but actually acknowledging that, accepting that it's not mine. This isn't actually not my journey. I can love, I can encourage, I can walk alongside, but I cannot make it any different than it is. And so it's not my job, it's not my place. So that was, for me, that was acceptance. I love what you said. Regular acceptance is just like, oh my God, this is terrible, and it's what I've got to contend with.
Yeah, and I love the place that you've arrived at, the wisdom that this journey with your daughter has brought you to, because whether your child or your loved one is struggling like ours are or not, it's the same situation. You never know what's going to happen to anyone, to ourselves, to the world, right? It's all basically out of our control.
Yeah, it's just our kids are taking
so
really taking it to the nth degree to make sure we get
our
this.
this learning, like we have, and so
I'm laughing in such a way as to know that we can, you and I can, I hope. There's so much respect in this space between you and I hope that that laughter is, if you don't laugh, what do you do? You know, really.
yeah.
And it comes from an understanding and a place where actually there is some lightness around it all from time to time. In fact, more and more often.
Yeah, and I think the recognition, it does lighten the burden
Mm.
because it's not all ours to carry.
No, coming back to your words, letting go. That's it, right? So from walking around with this heavy burden of like, oh, how am I going to make this better? How am I going to fix this? What can I possibly do? I've created this or I've co-created this situation. Now what?
Mhm. Mhm.
Surely I owe it to my child to make this all better, rather than coming
Mm.
to that place of responsibility and heavy weight, but
Mhm.
be able to say, okay, so I'm going to meet them where they're at today, and I wonder what I'm going to be invited to offer or hold or observe. We were just talking, weren't we, before we jumped on the call about not initiating, but responding to
Mhm.
what's in front of us rather than trying to create something more because it's not ours.
Yeah. Another trying to orchestrate some outcome that we think is best,
Mm, yeah,
which implies an intelligence and a wisdom that's beyond our capacity.
that's such wisdom in the idea of identifying what you can control and surrender and what,
Mm.
you know, because if it's difficult, if there's a how or a what should I be doing, it's not ours.
That's right. So
Identify.
tell me a little bit, Terry, what does radical acceptance look like for you? Right, it's easy to talk about, but can you tell us a little bit about when you've been able to call in radical acceptance? What does it look like, and how do you manage to do that? How do you embody radical acceptance?
Is every day, right? It has to be every day. And now it's more often than not. I'm very grateful to be able to say, and that's not to say the work here is done. There's many, many more moments which
Mm.
definitely show up differently. I could give even just this morning as an example. Once again, my child is not at college. The message I received this morning was I'm filled with so much dread at the idea of attending
Mm.
to vomit. And so, I'm like, you can't get much more articulate than that. This from a young person who tells me daily that they don't know how to join in conversations or communicate for themselves or advocate for themselves and surrounded by their peers. So with all of that perceived insecurity, when she spoke to me in such a way she was able to articulate how she felt, she's learning the language because we're using the language a lot more. I'm using it on myself, so she's starting to model that for herself, which is great. But I don't shy away from the fact that my initial response was, oh, not again, come on, that's like you're not making it in even one day out of five sometimes. It's like you're going to lose your place or all the things, all the system things. Oh, they're reviewing your education plan and your attendance record is going down the toilet and what's going to happen? There's not even a story to follow because if you start to follow it, actually, where it lands is okay. So my child is somebody who may just not be attending college and may just be choosing a different path. So it's like, okay, when you weigh it up, it's
Not the end of the world.
not the end of the world. It's okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first part, I would say, of radical acceptance. But it was also accepting myself in all of this and noticing that there was that frustration where I just wanted to just swear and I noticed even my responses didn't have the kisses at the end. We were texting, by the way. So I took care of myself in that moment. Yeah.
And I just want to add that because I think, knowing your story, you've worked so hard to get her into that school, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think that's often the case that we've worked so hard to create some environment where we think our child can, quote, succeed.
yeah.
It feels so exhausting. Like, I worked so hard and now you're not taking advantage of it. And so there's a lot of emotion. They're like frustration, maybe some anger, and you're processing, you're working through it. But that's the first thing that kind of jumps up when you hear, no, I can't go to school again.
Absolutely. And it was interesting today. We've had a couple of moments as well. Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that as well. Because I also, as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, also how much of that was my version of what I thought was right for her. A lot of that was, yeah, okay, I needed to go that route because we had to go that way in order to give her the education that she required. And at the same time, how much of it was me being hopeful that she's going to be an artist, hopeful that she's going to use her gifts, hopefully, you know. But it was quite interesting today because coming back to the radical acceptance moments, she's asked me to do some processes with her, do a little bit of parts work, which is not something that I was particularly comfortable doing, being that I'm her mother. But actually, again, it was an invitation. I didn't go out and initiate. She's asked me, we've sat, we've done some things, and she's had some major shifts. So we went out for a drive today, and I did a lot of listening. And I actually was able to have a conversation with her about all these years where I've disempowered unconscious her. So radical acceptance came in the form of me saying it about myself, accepting myself in that moment. Look, you know, there's a reason why you find it so hard to be in conversation with people, because since you were this high, you know, if somebody asked you a question, you'd look to me and I'd answer it. I'd swoop in. And she's nodding. She said, yeah, Mum, this is true. And I said, what I can see for you now. And most importantly, not coming at her with like, I'm the guilty parent, I've done this to you, you're so broken, but actually to be able to say to her, look at you, you've overcome all of those challenges that I've gifted you unwittingly. And now I can see you holding your own in conversation. And I was citing the examples where she was doing that. And I could see her getting bigger in front of me in herself, you know, growing into herself. And I said, I am sorry for all of that time. And at the same time, I can see how much more wisdom you had about you to be able to overcome all of that. So
it's brilliant that you were able to be so transparent with her and so self-aware, and that she could see how you can acknowledge your role in things without a lot of self-judgment, though, with just kind of, that's just, you know, I did the best at the time with what I knew and the tools I had.
What was nice
and
self-acceptance was for me, but also she was able to have a moment of it for herself. Because, yeah, my mom did this, but look at me now. You know, I'm actually.
Yeah. And we're all so familiar with what we do because we don't want to be uncomfortable. We're so uncomfortable when we see our kids struggle.
Yeah.
Right. Like you would have been so uncomfortable to see her struggling for words or not being able to express herself. And so you would, instead of accepting, it's just our coping mechanism to not deal with the discomfort.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it makes me cringe even thinking about it back then. I couldn't stand silence, you know, for so long. I could not bear silence. I had to fill every gap. I felt like if there was silence, and that was, I grew up in an environment where silence meant, to the extent that actually my daughter mistook me for an extrovert. Mum, you're such an extrovert and I'm an introvert. We're so different. You can talk to anybody. And I said, actually, I've come to terms with the fact that I'm actually an introvert.
And so a question, how do you shift from regular acceptance to radical acceptance? What goes on in your mind and in your body? I mean, what does that look like for you? How would someone else that wants to try and adopt this in their life, you know, learn from you about how to do this?
It's interesting, that question, because I think it starts at a point of questioning, or certainly did for me, where, you know, and you and I both, we've really kind of been pushed into a corner in terms of all of this and needing to understand and find this radical acceptance. It kind of found us, right? Because to actually exist in a world where I was responsible for keeping my daughter alive, and if that didn't happen and she didn't make it, that was on me. That was too much. It wasn't about finding an escape, like, oh, I can't handle it. It's not, you know, that's not, sounds like a bit of a pity party, but the truth of it is it was genuinely too much, you know. It reminds me of Eckhart Tolle, not that I'm comparing myself at all, but when he had his moment where he went into a really dark place and kind of got lost himself down that rabbit hole because he realized that his pain was so great, his suffering was so great that he actually couldn't exist in this moment. And it reminds me of that because I'm asking the questions. So I did start to go down the route of spirituality, and I'd been on that path for a while, but I hadn't had that push, and that shoved me into a situation where I started to learn more about non-duality I went to a couple of satsangs and I spoke to these wisdom teachers, and I'm just like, what the hell? What am I supposed to do? And at that time, my body was crippled. I had this polymyalgia rheumatica,
Mm.
autoimmune things. So I really was up against it. My body really couldn't take it. My body, my heart, my spirit, my mind. It was just, it was too much. So that doesn't have to happen that way for everybody, because I understand now that there is a path. You can learn it differently. If you have enough curiosity, I believe you can actually just ask yourself the right questions. But I do believe that it gets to a point where you're right on the precipice of something where it matters to you that you understand that you're not in control, that you're not the creator of everything that's in your moment. Like everything before you is not yours. In fact, if you didn't exist, that moment would exist without you. And if you weren't here, it would carry on. And the creation part of it is not on us. So coming back to what we were talking about, because it always goes full circle, but learning to respond and not initiate, learning to
Mm.
understand that the world is going to continue unfolding under our feet, regardless of how we show up, and trusting that innate presence, that essence that we're all born with, the spiritual
Mm.
entity, the true
Yeah.
self exists inside every one of us. How can it not? How can it not?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. No, and what I'm hearing too is that part of it was, in a sense, self-preservation. Like you couldn't go on, you couldn't function. Your body was shutting down. It was, was telling you, I can't go on like this. And your body was telling you, you matter and you need to make a change. A big part of that, and I think it's critical for our role accompanying our young people and our struggling, but particularly our struggling young people, is that when we come to the place where we can radically accept what is happening, we are so much better positioned to support them and to
Yes.
accompany them, right? Because it's not coming anymore from a place of, I'm uncomfortable. I have to do whatever I can to eliminate this discomfort, to figure out how to solve your problems, how to make this situation different than what it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And when you say that, we step out of that codependency state and we're walking alongside each other. I love talking about the stickiness, because for so long I had this with my daughter where I would ask them if they're okay, and they go, yeah. And you go, are you really? It was horrible. It was so sticky and uncomfortable for her, because she's like, well, why do you think I'm not okay? These kind of things go,
Mm.
because I'm acknowledging that it's okay, actually. Whether she's okay or not, it's not my business in this moment. So yeah, I'm with you. It's like, it's really allowing them to live their own life and not feel
Mm.
what they do is in any way causing, they're not responsible for us. And we're not,
Well, that's the other piece, right? Is that, we know very well that when our kids are struggling, not only are they dealing with their own demons, but then they're dealing with their caregiver's pain and having to carry that and feeling responsible for that,
yeah,
which is not something that they need to be carrying,
absolutely, 100%.
right?
That's so heavy. That's a heavy
So
burden.
heavy.
And
Yeah.
that so easily
And the
with,
guilt and the shame and all of that, right?
yeah, and what am I doing to you? Yeah, especially when they're struggling, right? So
Mm.
I'd love to just ask you that same question, and I really appreciate you asking it of me. What does it look like for you, Catherine? Radical acceptance.
Mm.
Could you give us an example of how that shows up or your experience of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, as I've shared, I think a lot of my radical acceptance has come from, my daughter's mental health struggles and particularly how that's driven her addiction or struggle with addiction.
Of course.
And I think, along the lines of what we've been talking about, it's just the acceptance that her struggles are not coming from a desire to be rebellious or self-indulgent or, lack of self-control or all these other things, these sort of older way that we used to look at addiction as like a character flaw, really.
Yeah.
Um, and instead knowing that it's coming from her pain and her desire to, it's filling a need for her.
Yeah.
And I think the acceptance is kind of what I was saying really we were talking about at the beginning is knowing that my role is really to see what's unfolding day by day for what it is in the moment and not bringing fear about the future or for me self-judgment or blame or shame about the past, but just seeing what's unfolding and knowing very well that there could be many different outcomes, and there's just as much likelihood of the worst possible outcome as there is of something incredibly beautiful happening with her life that I've never even conceived.
Mm-hmm.
It is letting go of taking my hands off the steering wheel, which is really hard for me, and believing that there is something else out there, which really gets to this, as you've talked about, the spiritual path, which I know is not for everyone. But whether you're spiritual or not, the facts are that you don't have control, right? And that the universe in our world has a logic and has a set of patterns that can give us comfort. There's a reason for things happening, which we can't often see. But you can look back in your life, all of us, and see, okay, that happened and it led to this, and that was a good thing because then it helped me grow. It brought my life in this other direction. And we have to kind of trust in that logic.
Yeah.
And I think what that looks like for me, so for example, now, my daughter is still struggling with her addiction and is trying to make a commitment to stay away from harder substances and all of that entails. And it's just, I have to go when I'm in those moments where I want to lecture, and I do sometimes, or I do send texts, we know that, but where I want to try and get her to see the light, right? Can you see all you are and all your possibility and all these things? Is just to feel my feet on the ground, feel that connection to the earth, that grounding, and just be aware of what's going on inside of me, and to breathe. I often do these really slow exhales. Sometimes I'll put my hand over my heart, which is my reminder how important it is to come from love and not fear. And that's how I'm able to enter into radical acceptance. That's what I do.
I love that you've brought that into the moment by moment situation and showing up there, and how on a practical level that actually can be experienced. Because I know we go way back into Shivali's work. One of the first things she teaches about is the conscious pause. But there's much power in that, and everybody's got a different version of what that looks like. But the most important thing is to just notice yourself, breathe, stop. In that tiny amount of time, your perspective can do a 180. It really can. And everything else, taking stock of who you are in that moment, who your child is in that moment, so much can happen in a nanosecond. So thank you for...
Yeah. And you're able to tap into your wisdom, because your wisdom is not, in times where you're triggered, the wisdom is not the first thing that comes to the surface. Right? It's like, it's the ego, it's the reaction. How can I protect myself? How can I avoid this discomfort? How can I? No, but that pause will allow you to tap into that. Kind of going back to where this comes from, and all the wisdom traditions that go back for thousands of years, they tap into this importance of slowing down, of trusting, of allowing. And I can read this, from the Tao Te Ching. This is the 64th verse, which, I love because it reminds me so much about, again, of this release, of this acceptance and detachment and letting go. So it's rushing into action, you fail. Trying to grasp things, you lose them. Forcing a project to completion, you ruin what was almost ripe. Therefore, the master takes action by letting things take their course.
What more is there to say?
What more is there, right?
Absolutely.
Just to stop frantically trying to paddle, and just to allow things to go and see where we end up.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And it's about staying present. And I think if we circle back to how does radical acceptance differ from normal acceptance, I'd like to offer up that radical acceptance exists in those moments that we're talking about, where we take some pause to be still and to not be doing and controlling and managing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Teri, for this conversation.
Thank you. I loved it.
Yeah, I did too. It's really helpful. And I hope that it was helpful for other people as well.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay, here's the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. See you next time.